whole point of keeping the lunchbox cool is to safeguard the food. You don't want any of the bacteria going crazy in the heat wave, and then actually your little one ends up with a tummy upset because they've eaten something that actually they shouldn't, it was too long outside of the fridge. Welcome back to Lunchbox World. Now today you can see the weather's getting warmer, and I wanted to do a quick video with my top 5 tips for keeping the lunchbox cool in the warmer weather, or in the summer, whenever there's a heat wave. But actually I think this is a good reminder for all the way through the year. So, even in the winter, I think it's really important to just be mindful of these 5 top tips for keeping the lunchbox cool and the food safe to eat at lunchtime. So quickly running through the top 5. Number 1, use an insulated lunch bag. Number 2, use ice packs to keep the lunch cool. Number 3, use extra things in the lunchbox to keep the lunch cool. So that this could be sandwiches that have been refrigerated overnight. This could be fruit that you've kept chilled in the fridge overnight. Number 4 is use other things like a frube or a tube of yogurt. Use that as an ice pack as well. So you've frozen that the night before in the freezer. And number 5 is think about cartons of juice and things like that you can also put in the freezer and freeze so that it will slowly defrost as you get closer and closer to lunch. So these are my top 5 tips. So taking each of these in turn. So number 1, using an insulated lunch bag. I think this is really important all year round, whatever the weather, because when you're in a warm environment with the central heating on, then the ambient temperature is still going to be warm, so it's really important to have an insulated lunch bag because that just protects the food that's inside the lunch bag. So that's super important. Number 2, ice packs. I would definitely use 1 ice pack all year round. Just make sure you put it in the freezer the night before, that you're going to need it for the next day. So it's just getting into that rhyme and a rhythm. But when it's super hot, so if there is a heat wave or it's the height of summer, I would even go and be as bold as to use 2 ice packs, so 1 on top of the lunch and 1 underneath the lunchbox, so that it's almost like an ice pack sandwich inside the insulated lunch bag. Then 3, chilling everything the night before. So I think there's nothing worse than you've kind of done all the due diligence of you've got the insulated lunch bag, you've kept it away from radiators the night before, you've chilled everything in the fridge, and then the lunchbox has been sat somewhere where it's really warm, and then you're putting in the cold food and then the chilled fruit juice or whatever, and that's immediately going to raise the temperature of all the elements or the different aspects of your lunch bag that you're putting into the lunchbox. I'm really hoping this makes sense. So taking the different elements, the sandwich is better if it's been either freshly made with all of the different ingredients in the fridge overnight. Make it in advance, or make it, get up early and do that. With the fruit as well, I would put all of that in the fridge overnight, chop it up, ready. Again, that just is keeping the temperature of the entire lunchbox lower, cooler. Next up, fruit juice cartons or water. Again, if you're going to freeze the water, make sure the bottle isn't totally full because it does expand when it's frozen. So I just make sure you keep a certain amount in the bottle empty so that the water can expand when it freezes. And then just remember to get it out as soon as you're packing the lunch, and then it should have defrosted by the time it gets to lunchtime. So that can act as another kind of ice pack. Cartons of juice, that's another one that you can freeze and pop in the lunch bag inside the lunchbox. And another idea is frozen yogurts. If you really do want to put that kind of snack inside the lunchbox when it is super hot, I would freeze it. I wouldn't just take it from the fridge and put it in if we are having an extreme heat wave. I would be more inclined to leave that kind of thing out of the lunchbox if it is super hot. But obviously, you gauge the temperature, gauge the weather in your area, but just to be super safe, because the whole point of keeping the lunchbox cool is to safeguard the food. You don't want any of the bacteria going crazy in the heat wave and then actually your little one ends up with a tummy upset because they've eaten something that actually they shouldn't, you know, it was too long outside of the fridge. So really hope that you find these top tips super helpful. Any comments, anything that you'd add to this, let us know. Quick recap again. Number 1, use an insulated lunch bag whenever possible, because this acts as a kind of protective environment to keep the lunch cool. So it's almost like a barrier between your lunch and the environment out, you know, the heat, if you like. So it's almost like a little sleeping bag, isn't it? So number 1, use an insulated lunch bag. Number 2, use an ice pack. If it's super hot, use 2 ice packs. Number 3, think about keeping the entire ingredients in the lunchbox cool so that you're keeping the entire lunchbox cool. Number 4, think about putting water in the freezer the night before, or cartons of juice, or frubes, frozen yogurts, things like that, because these will all help to keep that temperature down, keep the entire lunch cooler. And then I would always just take it out of the fridge at the last minute and go to school or college, wherever it's for. Even if it's an adult lunchbox, I would just make sure ideally that you can use or have got the use of a fridge in the working environment so that you can keep your food safe until lunchtime. So the other thing to be aware of is the colour of the lunch bag. Now, black, if it is super hot, you're experiencing a real extreme heat wave, black is not a good colour for lunch bags, lunch boxes, because it acts as a bit of a heat magnet. You know what a black car's like, you know, in the heat, in hot countries, you rarely see black cars. It tends to be white cars because the white reflects. So just be mindful of that in the warmer weather. Think about the colour of the lunch bag because you don't want it acting like a heat magnet. The other thing is check in the school or the environment of where the lunch bags are going to be stored, because when my kids were little, I noticed that they had like a trolley that had all the lunch bags on it, and that was just in the full sun, streaming through the window. So do check that in your local school, college, wherever, and just make sure that you do store the lunch bag somewhere out of direct sunlight ideally, because then that's just going to keep the lunch bag, the lunchbox cooler. And our ultimate goal with all of this is to keep the food safe. We don't want tummy upsets, we don't want poorly tummies or anything like that. So that is the whole point of keeping the lunchbox cool and the lunch bag cool and the food safe enough to eat at lunchtime. So I really hope you find these ideas useful, and if you did like this video, I think you're going to like these ones next. So see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.